Well, hello and welcome to bigcountryhomepage.com. I'm Manny Dyess. Here today, we are joined by Congressman Jodey Arrington of the 19th District of right here in Abilene in the Big Country. Congressman Arrington, thank you so much for taking time out for us today.
Honored to be with you. Honored to represent the food, fuel, fiber, and freedom fighters at Dyess Air Force Base.
Yes, sir, indeed. All right, well, let's get right into it because speaking of Dyess, we have some things to chat about when it comes to those fine folks over there. They're the National Defense Authorization Act. You helped secure $22 million for Dyess Air Force Base for the 2023 fiscal year. Tell me what went into this and how important was this move for a national defense right here in Abilene, Texas?
Well, we've been blessed as Americans to have the greatest fighting force in all the world, but you just can't say that and it be true. You've got to make those investments, and we have assets that are aging and that are being phased out, and we're having new assets being brought online. And one of those examples is with the B-1 bombers and the next generation bomber, the B-21, and so we're in that sort of awkward phase where we've got the most lethal bomber in the world being developed, and probably in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll start to see that flying out of the Big Country. But for now, we have ever-evolving threats, even growing threats in some parts of the world and with some of our adversaries. So we've got to make sure that the B-1 is ready and is lethal and is capable of projecting American air power and deterrence around the world. And so the 22 million that we secured is to add new weapon systems, namely hypersonic weapons, so that we can stay on the cutting edge and have the competitive advantage vis-a-vis our adversaries like China and Russia. So it's important that they're relevant and ready for the fight. And then it's also important that we invest in the further development and making sure that the B-21 is ready and on time in the next 3 to 5 years. That was $3 billion of investments.
Mm-hmm. Well, you represent Dyess Air Force Base right here in Abilene, but there are a number of bases in Texas. We have one just down the road in San Angelo, Goodfellow Air Force Base. How critical is it to make sure that bases in Texas stay open and operational?
Well, if you just look at Dyess Air Force Base, it represents $1 million a day to the community of Abilene and the greater Abilene economy. So it's significant. And Abilene has won the award for the best host community for bomber bases so many times, they actually changed the name to the Abilene Trophy. So before I even got to Congress and took office, Abilene and the good people of Abilene and their love and support for our airmen preceded me. And it's made all the difference in my credibility and my effectiveness at getting the resources and the investments we need. But Texas in general is one of the most veteran-friendly states and most supportive states for our military of all armed services. And so it's significant on so many levels. Probably the deepest level is just the love for country and our recognition that we cannot be safe and free, and we cannot have the promise of America's future without our sons and daughters wearing the uniform and willing to sacrifice their lives for this great experiment in liberty. So for all those reasons, we've got to make sure that we're making the appropriate investments. At the end of the day, though, it's not about our backyard and our economy and our lifestyle. It's about our country. It's about providing for a common defense. That's the language of the Constitution. And while America is great because America is free, there is no freedom without security. So my first obligation is to make sure that our interests, our allies, and our homeland, every American, is safe because we've equipped our airmen and other members of the armed services with the tools and resources they need to be successful.
All right. Well, keeping the national defense security theme, recently the House passed an $840 billion policy bill that would increase the Biden administration's Pentagon budget by $37 billion in a bipartisan effort. Now, it's not every day we hear about bipartisan efforts. What is it about defense spending that brings both parties together?
That's a great question. There seems to be too few times that members from both sides of the aisle in Congress, House and Senate, actually find common ground, work together to advance the interest of all Americans. And I just think veterans and the military both seem to take us from a red versus blue posture to a red, white, and blue posture, where it's America first, America over our party. And that's refreshing. Look, I'm a member of Congress, and I'm encouraged when we can do it. The bill's not perfect, Manny, and I can point out the flaws of this bill, where we spent too much, where we didn't go far enough, where we had things that weren't even relevant or germane, in my opinion, to our national defense strategy. But at the end of the day, Ronald Reagan would say, if you can get 80%, then take it, and then come back and fight for the other 20% another day. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. It is good, it's strong. And right now, with what's going on in Eastern Europe, what's going on with China vis-a-vis Taiwan, and the potential threat there, and of course with Iran and the nuclear weapons and their interest, we've got to make sure that America is strong on the world stage, and that our troops feel like that we are supporting them, and that we've got their back. I mean, one of the components of this NDAA, this National Defense Authorization Plan, is to give our troops a 4.6% pay increase. And that's a modest increase. When you look at inflation, it's probably not enough, but at least it sends a message to them that we love them, we appreciate them, and we've got their back.
Well, Jodey Arrington, Congressman Jodey Arrington, we thank you so much for joining us. You shed so much light on different things. Glad you brought up that Ronald Reagan reference. It's always a breath of fresh air when we hear quotes from him.
I love him. He's my hero, and I'm grateful and honored to represent the big country in our nation's capital. Thanks for your time, Manny.
Definitely. All righty, for Congressman Jodey Arrington right here in the 19th District, I'm Manny Dyess for bigcountryhomepage.com.